Vayetze Yaakov be'er Shava vayelech Harana. So the pasuk begins Vayetze Yaakov be'er Shava. So he left Be'er Shava vayelech Harana. So the pasuk is superfluous. You don't have to tell me he left. You just have to tell me he arrived. Vayelech Harana. We know that already he was in Be'er Sheva. Why does the pasuk have to say Vayetze Yaakov Be'er Sheva Vayelech Harana? It's extra words. If I say I came to Miami, so you know I'm coming from New York, I have to say he left New York and he came to Miami. We know you left New York. You didn't snap your fingers. You had to leave somewhere and you came somewhere. So why does it say Vayetze Yaakov be'er Shava vayelech? So there's different explanations said. The famous explanation is said by the great Rabbi Bet Levi. If you remember in last week's parasha, so Yaakov Abinu is told by his mother that you have to run away because your brother Esav wants to kill you, and therefore sakanat nefashot. So you have to get out of town. However, Yaakov Abinu said a different instruction. Yaakov Abinu said, go to the house of Lavan. Yitzhak Abinu said, go to the house of Lavan in order to go get married. So it comes out that Yaakov Abinu was in a dilemma, because he has now what his mother told him, and he has what his father told him. His mother told him, get out of town. Doesn't matter where he goes, just leave town. But when it comes to Yitzhak Avinu's commandment, he's more concerned not that he leaves town, but he's more concerned of where he gets to, where he arrives. So therefore this pasuk is coming to tell us what a tzaddik Yaakov Abinu was, in order to fulfill kibud ab va'em. Vayetze Yaakov be'er Shava, to fulfill kibud em. Vayetze. Vayelech Harana, in order to fulfill kibud av. And therefore the pasuk is splitting it up to tell us that Yaakov Abinu had a double kavanah. He had a kavanah to leave, but he also had a kavanah to arrive. Kibud em v'kibud av. That's the tzaddikim. However, if we look at the Pirush of Rashi, Rashi says, oh, Vayetze Yaakov be'er Shava, it comes to teach us a lesson. Lelamed, she'yitziat tzaddik min hamakom osa roshem. That when the tzaddik leaves, he leaves a roshem, he leaves a vacuum. All the time that the tzaddik is in the town, he hoda, he ziva, he hadara. Pana, yatsa hoda, Yatsa ziva, yatsa hadara. So don't think when Yaakov Abinu left, it wasn't just a regular Yitziyah. Yatsa Yaakov me'er Shava, this is a big consequential leaving. It's not stam, something left. Something left with Yaakov. Pana ziva, pana hoda. That means Be'er Sheva will never be the same. When the tzaddik leaves, Yitziat tzaddik min hamakom osa roshem. So I had a simple question. Yaakov Abinu is the first tzaddik to ever leave a place. Avraham Abinu left. Lech lecha. Why didn't Rashi say in Parashat Lech lecha? Avraham left. Yitziat tzaddik min hamakom osa roshem. Yitzhak Abinu traveled in Eretz Yisrael. So he should say, oh, Yitziat tzaddik min hamakom osa roshem. Why does Rashi wait to tell us this very important klal? He waits till Yaakov Abinu. Why are you withholding information? Tell me this information in the first place, possible, by Abraham. Why wait until Yaakov? There's few ways to answer this question. I would like to offer two tonight, but there's many. The first interpretation is as follows. When Avraham Abinu left, Lech Lecha, who did he leave behind? Were there any tzaddikim behind? There were no tzaddikim. He left Terah. He left a bunch of Risha'im. So therefore, you don't have to tell me by Avraham, she'yitziat tzaddik min hamakom osa roshem. Of course, when Avraham left, the place was bankrupt. It's pashut asa roshem. However, when Yaakov Abinu left, he left tzaddikim behind. Yitzhak Avinu was still there. Rivka Imenu was still there. So you might have thought that doesn't make a roshem. There's still tzaddikim. That's why she says no. There's a difference between 3 tzaddikim and now 2 tzaddikim. Yetziat tzaddik. Even one less tzaddik in a town, it's not the same town. But you still have tzaddikim. Okay. So instead of having a 1500 watt bulb, now you only have a 1000 watt bulb. So it's light, but it's not as light as it was. By Avraham Abinu, you don't have to tell me that. When Abraham left, it was a blackout. When Abraham left, it was Hoshech, Apelah. So of course there's Yetziat Tzaddik Osar Roshem. It goes without saying. But in the case of Yaakov Abinu, you might have thought that his leaving would not have made such an impression. And that's why that she has to come and say, even a tzaddik that leaves tzaddikim behind, Osar Roshem. That's one interpretation. But there's another interpretation. If we look at the nature of the 2 tzaddikim, Avraham keneged Yaakov. Avraham was very outgoing. Avraham Abinu was doresh. He would go with a nefesh asher asu beharan. He would go from place to place. He would give derashot. He would give philosophy. He would teach the people. Good. Vayetze Yaakov be'er Shava vayelech Harana. So you heard me. If you're laughing, that means you heard me. Okay, anyway. The Gemara says about Avraham Abinu, Even Tova hayta teluya al savaro shel Avraham Abinu. V'chol mi shemistakel ba miyad netrapeh. It says Avraham Abinu had a necklace around his neck with an Even Tova, with a beautiful stone. And anybody that would look at it, miyad netrapeh, immediately would get healed. Now, I highly doubt that Avraham wore a necklace, although you have some rabbis today that wear necklaces, but that's for another discussion. But I doubt Avraham was from that group. He didn't wear rings, he didn't wear bracelets, and he didn't wear necklaces. I guarantee you that. Anyway, so what does it mean? Even Tova hayta teluya al savro shel Avraham Abinu. So I once heard from Hacham Vayetze alav Shalom that he said the Even Tova shayta was his voice box. This was the Even Tova, his voice, his speech. And anybody would come to a derasha of Avraham Abinu, miyad nitrapeh. What type of refuah? Refuat nefesh. You just hear one derasha of Avraham Abinu coming out of the Even Tova, pema pik margaliot. There was beautiful pearls that came out of his mouth. That was the Even Tova. So Avraham Abinu was well known. So therefore you could imagine wherever Abraham lived, there were signs all over the place. Sunday night, Avraham Abinu was giving a derash over here. Monday night over here. Tuesday night over there. Wednesday night over there. He would keep Jonathan very busy, Baruch Hashem. All over the place, Abraham's giving derashot. So when Avraham left, everybody said, oh, wait a minute, now what? The TZADIK left us. Now who's going to give us the derashot? So it was known when he left, of course, Osar Roshem, because his nature was public. Yaakov, on the other hand, the Yaakov ish tam, Yoshev Ohalim. Yaakov Abinu is a yeshiva boy. He sits in the Bet Midrash, Yoshev, Velomed. And he learns without interruption. For 63 years, ish tam Yoshev Ohalim. Ohalo shel Shem, Ohalo shel Ever. He was learning Torah his whole life. Okay. We need another one. Okay, looks like you ran out of batteries. Okay, kaparat Avraham. Anyway, Even Tova teluya me'savaro shel Avraham Abinu. Avanim tovot. What's the matter? Okay, it doesn't come off. Okay, you want this one also? You want this one also? This is over here. No, it's wrong. So anyway, Yaakov Abinu was sitting in the tent. Yoshev Ohalim. And you might have thought that when Yaakov Avinu was in the town, nobody knew he was there. He didn't give the rashot. He didn't go out, knock on doors, teach people. He was learning Torah for himself. So you might have thought that when he left, nobody knew he was there in the first place. So therefore, when he left, the town is the same town. He didn't make such an impression, Yaakov Avinu, like Abraham. That's what you would have thought. Pasuk says, no. Yitziat tzaddik min hamakom, even if he's a tzaddik nistar, even if he's a tzaddik that's himself, even if he's learning Torah and nobody knows about him, he's tamun betoch aholo shel Shem ba'aholo shel Ebed. When he leaves, it's a different town. David HaMelech says in Tehillim, shetulim bebet Adonai b'hasrot Elohenu yafrihu. What does he mean? Shetulim bebet Adonai, the tzaddikim that are planted in the house of God. You shouldn't think like the Apikorsim say, "My ahanulan rabbanan." What are the rabbis doing all day long in the kollel? Reading. One guy saw me once in the kollel, and I was by the coffee urn, getting a coffee. So he says, you're earning a living. Ani, from the urn, the coffee urn, earning a living. Earning a living. I'm earning a living in Olam Haba. You're earning a living in Gehinam. You're making fun of the Avrechim? Rasha. Anyway, but the point is that David HaMelech says, Shetulim bebet Hashem, even those that are planted in the house of God, even those that are planted in the house of Hashem, behasrot Elohenu yafrihu. Where is their influence felt? Behasrot. That means the guy on the outside is better because the guy on the inside is learning. Od pa'am, shetulim bebet Hashem. But where is the influence felt of the tzaddikim that are in Bet Hashem? Behasrot Elohenu yafrihu. And therefore David HaMelech says in also Tehillim, Ashrei Adam Oz lo bach misilot bilvavam bilvavo lo ne'emar ela bilvavam. I'll explain. Ashrei Adam Oz en Oz ela Torah shene'emar Adonai Oz la'amo yitin Adonai yibarech et amo b'shalom. Ashrei Adam Oz lo bach. He learns Torah for himself. He doesn't go teach. He doesn't knock on doors. He doesn't have a bet knesset. He didn't write sefarim. Oz lo bach. But he makes paveways. He makes pathways. Where? Misilot bilvavam. In their hearts. Bilvavo lo ne'emar ela bilvavam. That means you shouldn't underestimate the power of Bnei Torah that are learning. You shouldn't say, my ahanulan. What are they benefiting? They're reading for themselves, they're learning for themselves, and the world is not getting any advantage. This is categorically incorrect and wrong. The Pasuk is telling us, Ovei by Yaakov Abinu, even though he was Yoshev Tam, Yoshev Ohali, even though he wasn't like his grandfather Abraham, he stayed in the Bet Midrash. Vayetze Yaakov. When he left, the town would never be the same. Yitziat TZADIK min hamakom, even a tzaddik like Yaakov, tzaddik nistar, a tzaddik that's Oz lo bach, a tzaddik that's shetulim bebet Hashem, doesn't matter. It still makes a roshem on the town. So that's why that she does not mention it by Abraham, because it was obvious. But he has to make this point by Yaakov Abinu. So far so good? Good. However, what I came to say tonight as a Hidush is the following. If I was writing this Rashi, and I wanted to make the point that when the tzaddik leaves, he leaves a vacuum, how would you write that? I'll tell you how I would have written it. Yitziyat tzaddik min hamakom oseh halal. Halal is a vacuum. And I wouldn't use the word oseh either, because oseh sounds like something positive. Asiyah. I would say, exactly, nish'ar halal, remains a halal. But oseh is a positive word. So you don't use a positive on a negative. Oseh halal? No. Nish'ar halal. But Rashi doesn't say the word halal. He says, Yitziat tzaddik min hamakom osar roshem. It makes a roshem. It sounds like something positive is happening when the tzaddik is leaving. I'll explain, but you understand my diuk? יציאת הצדיק מן המקום זה עושה משהו. עושה משהו לטובה. מה זה עושה? רושם. מה זה רושם? I explained. Roshem is not a halal. Roshem is what the Zohar Kadosh says in many places, Reshimu. מה זה Reshimu? The Zohar Kadosh says that wherever there's Kedusha, and then the Kedusha leaves, there's always what's called a Reshimu that's left, a trace, an imprint, a footprint. There's still always a certain amount of residual Kedusha, that even though the main Kedusha left, yesh Reshimu shama. I'll give you an example. There was one time, Hazon Ish was walking in Bnei Berak on Leil Shabbat, and he got to a certain block, and he stopped, and he starts to breathe. So he tells his students, "You smell it?" He says, "We don't smell anything." He says, "I can still smell the reshimu of the two boys from the Panovich Yeshiva that were talking Divrei Torah on this corner in the afternoon." That means early in the afternoon, two boys stopped at the corner and they were talking Divrei Torah. Hazon Ish says, 6 hours later, I still feel the Roshem, even though they left. But there's a Roshem. The place is not the same. The Kedusha already is infused. There was a great rabbi called Rabbi Mordechai Gifter, alav Shalom. He was Rosh Yeshiva of Telz Yeshiva. He said when he studied in the Telz Yeshiva in Europe, during the break, Ben Asdarim, in between first Seder and Seder Sheni, the boys would take walks in the town and they would review the learning. So he says the farmers in Telz, that's in Poland, these are anti-Semites, they would tell the boys from the Telz Yeshiva, when you're walking, walk on our fields. Walk on our fields. Why? Because there was a tradition. Wherever the boys of the Telz Yeshiva walk, those fields have beracha. The wheat grows that year. Why? Because the tzaddik, when they were walking, they're talking the Divrei Torah. So he leaves a Roshem. Even though he left. But the farmers said the field is not the same. And therefore that's a great lesson. That tzaddikim, they put Kedusha in a certain place. But don't think when they leave, they take everything with them. They leave something behind. Yitziat tzaddik min hamakom osar roshem. And therefore there's still an element of the Kedusha of Yaakov in the place that he was. And it's always like that. And it's like that also when it comes to Averot. That if there's a Rasha in a certain place, there's a Roshem in the place. One time Rabbi Chanan Wasserman was in the car and they were driving him in Manhattan. He was in the back of a limousine, it was tinted windows. And they drove him past 42nd Street. It's not one of the holy places. It's a makom of tum'ah. And Rabbi Chanan Wasserman, his eyes are closed and all of a sudden he says, "Keep on driving, what is this? What are you bringing me over here? What do you even know? You're not looking at it." I mean, the tzaddik is able to feel the kedusha or vice versa, the tum'ah in the place. Even if the tum'ah is not directly in the place, but there's always a roshem of the tum'ah there. So even if it left, there's still something there. Chaim Palachi said, in a place where two people had a mahloket, keep away from the place 50 amot. Because the Sitra Hara is in that place over there where the mahloket is. And therefore you're going to walk in such a place, you're going to get damage from the... But there's no more mahloket there, but there's a roshem. There's a roshem of kedusha, and there's a roshem of tum'ah. With this, we understand something else. This is what Or HaChaim HaKadosh says, Rabbi Chaim ben Attar. Chaim ben Attar said, is that, why is it that when a Jewish person passes away, there's laws of tum'ah? However, when a goy passes away, there's no laws of tum'ah. Specifically tumat ohel. Adam ki yamut be'ohel. Atem kiruim Adam Ve'en umot ha'olam kiruim adam. So he said, I don't understand. What, the Jew has tum'ah and the Goy doesn't have tum'ah? Are we worse than the Goyim? So Or HaMikadosh says, no. I'll give you a mashal. He says, imagine you have a barrel of honey. And somebody comes and empties the barrel out. And he empties all the honey out. Now the barrel is empty. What happens when the barrel is empty? All the flies come. Why do the flies come? Because there's still some honey that's stuck on the perimeter of the barrel. There's a reshimu. And therefore, in the place where there was a lot of honey, when it's vacated, that's a place where the scavengers now come to get the good flavor. So he says that when the Jew passes away, as a neshama, the neshama feels inside of him. When the neshama is there, the kilipot cannot touch him because it's too holy. But what happens when the neshama leaves? It leaves a little reshimu. Now that reshimu is not so great to scare away the kilipot, and therefore the tum'ah comes in order to be yonek on the kiddusha. The goy doesn't have kiddusha, so therefore there's no kilipot. There's nothing to eat. There's no sweetness when he passes. There's nothing good that was there that when he dies that it's going to cause a reshimu. This is what Rashi is saying regarding Yaakov Abinu. Yitziat TZADIK min hamakom. You shouldn't think that all is lost. Even when a tzaddik leaves a place, his yitziah osah, that's a positive. Osah roshim al hamakom. Way after he leaves, the place still has a certain amount of kiddusha. Well, if that's the case, that would bring us to the end of the parasha. Understanding what I just said, it now highlights the end of the parasha. So the pasuk says, Vayashkem Lavan baboker, which is a hadush in itself, that Lavan woke up early. He doesn't get up for first minyan Lavan, but he must have had some trick up his sleeve to wake up. Vayashkem Lavan baboker, Vaynashek lebanav velebnotav. He kissed his children goodbye. Vaybarich etem, vayelech, vayashov Lavan lemkomo. And he went home. He went back to his place. Now, I don't need you to tell me that. That's a lot of words. Vayelech, vayashov Lavan lemkomo. What is the pasuk coming to tell me? He went back home? Who cares? He kissed his children. Finished. No, vayelech, vayashov Lavan lemkomo. What the Torah is coming to say, I think it's something incredible. If it's tzaddik, when he leaves the place, leaves the Roshim, could you imagine when the tzaddik is in the place? You know what? It's not a Roshim. That's already an explosion of Kedusha. Yaakov Abinu is Bechir Sheba Avot, the greatest of the Avot. And you know who had the most access to Yaakov Abinu more than anybody else in the world? Lavan. He could talk to him from morning to night. He could learn with him. He can discuss things with him. He can benefit from him. He lived there in his house for 22 years. You would think that Lavan, after 22 years living with the tzaddik, you'd think Lavan would be a better person. You'd think he'd be influenced by the tzaddik. I'm telling you, if the tzaddik leaves, there's a Roshem. Imagine when he's there. And the pasuk tells us something so disturbing, so upsetting, such an epic failure of Lavan. That after 22 years of living with the tzaddik Yesod Olam, Yaakov Avinu, vayelech vayashov Lavan lemkomo. He went back exactly to his place, the same place, his spiritual place, the same place that he was before Yaakov came. Could you believe it? And that must be that he made a conscious effort not to let Yaakov influence him. Because just by doing nothing, the tzaddik can influence you. Osmosis. But that means Laban wasn't passive. Laban must have been actively resisting the Roshem of Yaakov Abinu. There's no other way. You cannot live with the tzaddik and not get influenced. But our rabbis tell us that when you get married, you always look at the wife's brothers. Because the Gemara says that the majority of the children follow the wife's brothers. הרוצה לישא אישה יבדוק באחיה. Before you look at her, you say, who's the brothers? You have to ask the shadchan. What do you care? You're going out with the brothers? You're going out with the girl? Don't ask questions. I want to know who the brothers are. What do you have to know? Because my children are going to be like her brothers. If the brothers are Risha'im, so then even though she's a tzaddik, we have to be careful. How do we know that from? When Aharon got married, it says, Elisheva bat Aminadav ahot Nachshon. So the Gemara says, but Aminadav, that's his father-in-law, Aminadav. That's why he called the son Nadav, after his father-in-law. Nachshon, ahot Nachshon. What do I have to know that Elisheva is the sister of Nachshon? Because Aharon wanted to know who his children are going to be like. So when he saw that Elisheva is ahot Nachshon, Nachshon ben Aminadav, there's a tzaddik. There's a tzaddik he married. So from there we learn Yivdok be'acheha. Well, in the case of Yaakov Abinu, so we know Yitzhak Abinu got married to Rivka. Who's Rivka's brother? Laban. Yivdok be'acheha. Well, Baruch Hashem, Yaakov Abinu, he snuck out. But who became like Uncle Lavan? And it's the same story. Mamash deja vu. That's French, deja vu. Which means what? Esav lives with Yitzhak Avinu for 63 years. You have instant access with one of the avot. You know what that means to be with one of the avot? More. And Rivka is one of the tzaddiket. And still, nothing. He learned that from his uncle Lavan. The same midav Lavan Rasha. Lavan's living with Yaakov Abinu and he doesn't let the tzaddik influence him. He blocks it. And Esav would have the same. That's the biggest miracle. The biggest miracle is not that Yaakov became a tzaddik. It's that Esav didn't. That's the Hiddush. They once told a story. There was a great rabbi called Meshech Chochmah, Meir Simcha Kohen Medvinsk. Dvinsk is a city, a small city in Europe. The waters were rising and rising and rising and rising. So they came to the Meshech Chochmah and they said, Hakam, we're going to get flooded. This story was told by one of the former heads of the Mossad of Israel. Secular guy, atheist, but he lived in Dvinsk. He said, I was there. I was there with the Meshech Chochmah. The guy is a Hiloni Gamur. So he says, what did the Meshech Chochmah do? He turned, the water's rising and rising and rising. So he tells the water, stop. The water doesn't listen, it keeps on going. So he says, I'm Meir Simcha Kohen, I'm the chief rabbi of Dvinsk. And when I give a psak halakha, people listen. I said stop. Oh, the water stops, it's going down. He says, I saw it with my own eyes. So one of the rabbis said, that the Meshech Chochmah can stop the water, that's not such a miracle. But that this Mossad head still remained an atheist after he saw that, that's a bigger miracle. You saw the tzaddik, you were there. And you're still a Rasha, you're still a Kofer Ba'ikar. That's a bigger miracle than the Meshech Chochmah. And to me that's the bigger miracle, not that Yaakov became Yaakov. The bigger miracle is how did Esav become Esav? Every day you came home, you saw your father. It's like he didn't see his father. He served his father. He understood what his father was. He saw his mother. Living in such a house, we cannot imagine what it means to live in the house of the Avot. What does it mean to live in the house of the Avot? And Esav had access. No less access than Lavan had. And what does the Pasuk say? Vayashov Lavan limkomo. But what about Yaakov? V'Yaakov halach ledarko. Yaakov is the opposite. Not only didn't he allow Laban's negative behavior to influence him, Yaakov Abinu, even after he left. Now let's understand where he is now. 63 years he learned Torah by his father. Then he went to Shem Be'ever for 14 years. And now he just brought the Shivatim in the world. Yaakov Abinu is 84, he's got to be in his 90s. He's a Gadol Ador. You would think after all the spiritual elevation of Yaakov Abinu, he has every right to relax, to retire. The Pasuk says, Yaakov halach ledarko. Yaakov Abinu is still moving. He's still growing. He's still elevating. Where Lavan is b'mekomo. Lavan is stationary. He's stagnant. He's fixed. He's not moving. He's not in flux. The tzaddik is always going mehayil el hayil, from one madrega to another madrega. And that's when the tzaddik is alive. But you shouldn't think, even after the tzaddik leaves, yitziat the tzaddik min hamakom osar roshem. And therefore the place where the tzaddik was, there's still a kedusha, there's still a value. The place where the tzaddik sat, there's kedusha in that place. The book that the tzaddik used, there's kedusha. The place where he ate, there's kedusha. That means you shouldn't only think only when the tzaddik is there. Vadai. But yitziat tzaddik min hamakom osar roshem. It's a positive thing. And therefore the Torah is coming to tell this specifically about Yaakov Abinu. That he left a roshem, he left a tremendous impression on the place, that even though he would leave it, the place would never be the same. Be'er Sheva would never have the same, it would never have the same status. And that's our purpose as well, as parents, as grandparents, as teachers. Our job is to make sure that we leave a roshem and a positive impression on our students, on our talmidim, and for that matter, on the place. So therefore, we elevate not only ourselves, but we elevate the makom as well. I pray that Be'ezat Hashem, your great rabbi, days like this, where people get together on a day off, your Mad Fagra, the day of Batala, and they come instead and they elevate it for Torah, Baruch Hashem, it has made a great roshem. It has made a roshem on your own souls, but the place, even though we're going to go home now, maybe some of you have, that's it, you learned the whole day. Yitziat tzaddik min hamakom. Roshem. The Miami Surfside is not the same after such a day of Yom Shekulo Torah. We've elevated it, and I say, Haskuvi ames levavchem, kodem yahalim leHashem, amen.